All right, ladies and gents, there is some new footage out that's just been out, an interview with Mr. John Gotti Jr., Mr. Gotti's son. And when these guys speak, we listen, right? Because these guys, this was real stuff. This was no acting, no bullcrap. These guys were the real deal. So we're going to watch a video. I'm going to post it in my chat real quick. Copy this. And, who ain't a fan? I better put it in the description too. I do believe I did already. All right. And like I said, when these guys talk, these ex-mafiosos, whatever they are, we listen because, and they scare me when they say that the United States government makes them look like baby crap. That scares me. So we're always listening. Pay no attention to the Three Stooges poster. I got my camera getting ready to do a fire video that's behind the picture I got leaning up. I love the Three Stooges. I pretty much say they're family. All right, so let's listen to some of this. Let me share this here. We're going to share this right here. All right, let's listen to the. Oh, let me fix this real quick. Hold on a minute. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's listen in a little about this. I'll give you my opinions on things. Not that anyone cares or I'm anybody special. Well, I am special mentally. Well, maybe. Well, dumb, yeah, but let's go ahead and listen to
this. Right. Later on in life when I did Ancestry, when you find out what your background's all about, apparently I'm 18% Italian. Someone in my family hooked up with an Italian we don't know about, right? So I've always gotten along with Italians. I go to New York and you have to, you would be like, how could you interview Sammy? He is lying. He's this, he's that. And then I would have some guys that would come up and say, but look, you heard the recording? Recording when John kind of threw Sammy under the bus. And he never happened. What I'm saying to you is in the recording. So Sammy.
John should have killed Sammy, quite frankly.
Well, that's what Sammy said. He thought he was going to kill him.
He should have killed him earlier. He should have killed him. Listen, Sammy was a guy that was green eyes. He was a monster. Okay. This is a guy, and he talks about, this is an amazing thing because when they go in front of the judge, when they're going to get their sentence reduced, all of these cooperators, what they do is they cry and say, I only pulled the trigger one time, including Sammy. He said he only pulled the trigger one time. But now he boasts 19 kills. I killed 19 people. No, he conspired. He schemed and killed 19 people. Let's get that straight. And including 2 innocent people. Nobody wants to talk about the 2 innocent people. Why? Why don't anybody want to talk about Alan Kaiser, a 16-year-old boy that through mistaken identity, not Louis Melito, Sammy Gravano shot Alan Kaiser in the head. I know this because I've interviewed people in his crew. When Sammy flipped, okay, I brought them into the lawyers' offices and told them, look, guys, open up, be truthful here, because they knew I was their protector. They knew that there was a faction within the group that wanted to kill all of them for being loyal to Sammy at one time, including Sammy's family. I wouldn't let it happen. There's another cooperator named Mikey Scars Di Leonardo. He knew all the particulars. In fact, I was using Michael to drive them into the city. I trusted Michael. I said, Michael, they got my word, safe passage. I made him bring them up to my Pocono house. This way they felt comfortable. We hunted together. They were suspicious that maybe I was looking to kill them. We met, we spoke. I said, look, nobody's going to harm you guys. Nobody's going to harm you.
This is Mikey Scars or no?
This is Mikey Scars was close to me and Michael bringing them in. And I have assured all of Sammy's crew, nobody's going to harm you guys, okay? But.
Hello, Miss Debbie Fox. How are you doing tonight? I'm going live real quick. There's a new video that's out with Mr. John Gotti Jr., which he's been low key lately. Nobody has seen him around. He's been very low key. He's been laying back. And everybody's been waiting for this interview, man. I'll tell you that much, right? When the Gotti speak, everybody wants to know. When Mr. Gravano speaks, everybody wants to listen. So let's continue to listen to this and see what really is going on. It sounds very interesting right now, I can tell you that much.
I'm keeping you guys. I'm helping you. I'm here. I'm in your corner. John, unless John, that order comes from John, and it never will come from John. You guys are safe, but you have to cooperate here with us. You have to go in and talk to the lawyers. You have to tell us everything about Sammy Gravano. John Gotti met Sammy Gravano for the first time in 1977 when he came out of prison. He met him for the first time, and he only met him through a couple of nightclubs coming and going. Okay, he didn't really know Sammy well enough. He began to know him later on in life, so we need to get all these facts put together. So I established what I call the Eddie Garofalo file, okay, which was his brother-in-law. Eddie Garofalo was his brother-in-law, his older brother-in-law, and he opened up. And I have all that, all the interview we done. He opened up. We have it all typed up, and he talks about the rift between Sammy Gravano and Louis Melito. And the rift happened because Louis Melito, who was a tough guy, a stand-up guy and a real tough guy in his own right, and Sammy had a problem. Apparently, he had a problem what he thought was some bikers. They roughed him up or whatever. He went and got Louis and came back, and both had guns on him. Sammy says, that's one of them right there. They rolled up on the kid. Sammy rolled down the window and shot the kid in the head. He always said that Louis Melito did it. Louis Melito never forgave him for putting him in that position. The kid went down as a John Doe at first, until at some point later on, they came to a conclusion who this kid was. And even when the FBI was issuing the reports of all his murders, that kid was down as John Doe, okay, which is an insult to his family. Alan Kaiser was down as John Doe, which is an insult to his family. But Louis Melito never let Sammy live that down, that he was put in that position and an innocent 16-year-old kid was shot in the head and killed. He never let him live that down. And Sammy at some point conspired, because Louis would slap Sammy. Louis was a tough guy and Sammy wasn't. And at some point, they had it came to a point, and Sammy went to the chief and basically made up a story that this guy's, was loyal to Paul or whatever. It was a cockamamie story. Okay. It's probably above my pay grade. But ultimately, in the end, he conspired and got Louis Melito killed. Okay. This is what he does. But you take that, for example, and you take his brother-in-law, ex-brother-in-law, Nick Scabetta. He talks about how Paul authorized him to kill Nick Scabetta. If Paul knew who Nick Scabetta was, excuse my crassness, am I allowed to curse?
Sure.
Whatever's not nailed down in this room, you could shove up my ass. How's that sound? If Paul had any idea who a guy named Nick Scabetta was, he was a civilian. From what Mikey Scars told me, he told me they went to school together. He said he was a happy-go-lucky kid, riding his bicycle in the area. Yeah, he had some problems like everybody else, like a lot of other people did at that time, but he didn't warrant to be killed. He got killed because he knew some deep, dark secrets maybe about Gravano. But that certainly was not a warranted mob killing. Those were two killings there that you could take them immediately off that list. Those were civilians.
Aha. Okay, okay, I see what Mr. Gotti Jr. is saying now. They were hitting people, and these were not commission hits. They weren't given by a boss. So now I understand what he's saying. That, someone was out there maybe using the family name or something or doing hits, but it had nothing to do with family business. All right. Let's go ahead and continue. Folks, I didn't want to put it on because I didn't know if they would strike me for putting on my family's face, right? The Three Stooges. So I put it on this crystal thing. I got this crystal stone or egg or whatever it lights up or whatever. All right, so now I understand what's going on. Let's continue. And so I guess this 16-year-old kid that got whacked was an innocent bystander and wasn't the people that jumped Mr. Gravano, I guess. That was a motorcycle club or something, or a guy or whatever. All right, let's continue with this.
So to sit there and project yourself as this guy, this good guy. He was never a good guy. He was a treacherous, scheming guy. Money was his God. His family was alive because of me. My father, when Sammy first flipped, the first visit went to see him. He was sick to his stomach. He said, "You know what? I violated my own ethics." He said.
Who's saying this, Sammy?
My father saying this to me.
Yeah.
In the visit in MCC when they walked Sammy out that night. The previous night, actually. I think it was November 8th, if I'm not mistaken. He says, Punk couldn't do any time. He said, the Punk couldn't do any time. He says, that's it. Couldn't do time. And I says, well, and I'm watching him vent a bit, my father. He's like this, and he's looking back, and he's completely beside himself. Like, you know, he's disappointed, not that he didn't expect, he's disappointed in himself for allowing this guy to move up. He's disappointed. His love for Frankie DeChico and some of the old timers that were proponents of Gravano for listening. John had there were better choices, and he allowed this guy to become what he is. And he fully knew before they got pinched what he was. He started now to pay attention and see what Sammy really was. Okay. And I'm waiting for instructions like, what are we supposed to do? Well, here we are. We're sitting here. And I'm here. And Jackie D'Amico, my Uncle Pete, we're listening to my father. And then he turns to me and he says, you make sure, John, nobody harms his family. We don't do that. Make sure nobody harms his family. I left, gathered everybody up and went to everybody, went to all the social clubs, spoke to everybody. And I said, make sure. And I got a lot of pushback. There was a group of individuals that wanted to take his house down. They wanted to take his house down with his family in it. And they wanted it, and they couldn't have his crew. They wanted them. And I told them it's not going to happen. It's not.
All right, so they wanted to take out Mr. Gravano, but Mr. John Gotti Sr. said, don't do nothing. Why? I imagine everybody, and even Mr. John Gotti Jr. was confused. Why not? And, you know, other people were asking, why not? What the heck is going on? Well, I think Mr. Gotti Sr. knew that they already had him. He was already put away or going away. They already made a deal with old Sammy the Bull. And if they took Sammy out, they would have known that Mr. Gotti had something to do with it, and they would have charged him with more stuff. And it would have brought more heat down probably on the family. So maybe he was using a good call there because they already had him by the cojones. And if something like that happened so soon with all this going down, there would have been no way but to blame Mr. Gotti Sr. for taking out Sammy the Bull, maybe. You know, yeah, maybe. All right, let's continue to listen here real quick. Bendejo, can you please behave yourself? We're watching a documentary that was just an interview that was just put out. So everybody wants to know this whole thing is huge on YouTube. I know what you're going to say, but what about the upchurching? This is huge. Right? This is a whole nother level. All right, let's continue to listen. Thank you, Miss Debbie, for being here tonight. I know you don't want to listen to this. This is boring stuff to women.
Not going to happen. This is not Italy. Okay, this is America. John Gotti is not those men. It's not going to happen, and that's that. And we did not let it happen. Did he care? Did he care? He went into the program. Now, remember now, he went into the program and did this when the mob wasn't squeamish on hurting people. Maybe they are now, but they had a penchant for hurting people back then. A lot of people. Okay?
John, is it fair to say for the audience that's watching this, rightfully so, you have to defend 100% your father. Nothing,
Absolutely.
so emotionally,
And always will.
and by the way, no one expects anything different, right?
Right.
Now, for the viewer who is not emotionally connected, like I remember when I interviewed Sammy, your sister came after me. I don't know if you remember
I've never watched the interview.
Okay, well, I'll tell you. I mean,
I'm not computer literate. I never watch any podcast.
No,
I don't do
well,
it.
I think that's good for you because it's more peaceful.
I just don't do it.
But I mean, I got tweets after tweet. You realize what, all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, messages, phone calls, all this stuff. But for somebody that's not attached to it emotionally, did you ever listen to the recording? The recording that they say where your father is.
I have them. I have the original tapes. It's he talking to Frankie Lacazio and saying, Frankie was an older man. Frankie was one of the classiest operators in that world, was probably one of the youngest guys in history to get the job, to go into that world, to go into that life. I think it was about 23 when he got the job, Frankie. And my father trusted Frankie. He was an elder statesman, a man of very limited words. In fact, the only time I really ever had him, he had an open conversation or really spoke was at his sentencing. Is when he told Judge Glasser that I'm innocent. You're giving me a life sentence. However, it's an honor to be John Gotti's friend. If there were more men like John Gotti in this world would be a better place. And he praised my father to the high heavens because Frankie was a traditional loyalist. He adored my father. My father adored him right back. Okay, right back. So this is John Gotti, who does he talk to? There's no complaint department. He is it. The buck stops with John Gotti, right? So he's talking to his number 2 guy, Frankie, very close to him. He's talking to Frankie. He's saying, Frankie, what do you want me to do here? He says, I've got all skippers coming in. This one's coming. His names, they're coming in. He keeps opening up businesses all over the place. We're not supposed to open up businesses. Paul did that. We're not supposed to open up businesses. We're supposed to let the men open the businesses. They got to earn. Okay, the men have to earn. They'll take care of us. But we can't be robbing contracts. We can't be doing this, that, or the other thing. We can't be doing these things. Sammy was killing people and then taking over their companies or going into a particular business, whereas that drywall. It was a company that operated and sold and did drywall, okay? Now, they would do their business. They would comply with the bids, and they would grease the right skids, keep things moving along.
Mm-hmm.
But then, Sammy, if you're an administrator, you're not supposed to have a crew. You're not supposed to have being in business where you can compete with the men and take business away from them. It's a no-brainer then, because you're the guy who's assigning the jobs. So you're going to assign all the jobs to yourself, okay? And this is what he was doing, and John was at wit's end. And he was looking for a little guidance from Frankie, someone he knew for many, many years and he trusted. Like, how do I react to this guy?
No. It's pretty different, right? So Sammy the Bulls, the administrator, he hands out the jobs to the unions, whatever, right? He's the one that assigns jobs to other guys so they can make money, yada, yada, yada. But Mr. Gotti Jr. is saying he was assigning the job to his guys. So the only ones that probably were making the money was him and his guys. And everybody was getting upset coming into the office. Mamma mia, matzo balls. Well, where's my money? I got my people are starving. I can't. The bull is taking everything, right? And this is where we all seen Goodfellas, right? This is where the troubles began. This is where it was bad. So yeah, pretty interesting. All right, let's listen to a little bit more of this. The noise your mic makes when you unmute it is annoying, just saying. Oh, well, you can't hear it. Debbie, can you hear when I play the video? If I don't mute the mic, can you still hear the video? Or is it echoing? All right, well, let's unmute. Or let's listen to this.
I'm going to pull this card. I'm going to pull him in and address him on this. But Frankie, what's the right approach? And it wasn't just one visit. It wasn't just one wiretap. It was two different separate occasions. There were two different dates, two different wiretaps where he's talking to Frankie. And then there's a third one, which Sammy doesn't talk about, where John is addressing Sammy, okay? And he's telling Sammy basically, okay, this is at the end of all of this. He comes to terms with it, not in that wiretap, not in any of those wiretaps. Frankie goes and gets Sammy, brings him to the chief late at night, and my father reads him the riot act. And he basically tells him, enough now, enough. We got men coming in complaining about you. You got skippers coming in, so on and so forth, complaining about you. You want to be a captain? I'll reduce you back to a captain. You want to be a soldier? I'll reduce you back to a soldier. What do you? No. Okay, then enough now. Back off. You can't be doing these things. And that was it. There was an understanding. And that's why you hear that tape afterwards of John saying, I'm getting pinched soon. Okay? I'm going away. Okay? And I know what I got to do once I go away. I got a life sentence. I know what I got to do. But what are you comfortable being? And he's trying to ask him what kind of position you would want to be in. So obviously, John came to terms. Sammy had the understanding what John's expectations were of him, and everybody was going to move forward. Now, you heard those tapes at bail hearings.
Mm-hmm.
He did, meaning Sammy did. You were John's cellmate. You were my father's cellmate. Why don't you take care of your business? Why don't you take care of your business? He said nothing. He said nothing, okay? He understood my father was angry at him.
Wait, what do you mean by that? Why don't you take care of business?
Should have killed John. You were a cellmate. Kill him. That door locks. It's you and the man.
Well, he said he wanted to.
He did. And I want to fly a space shuttle, but I don't know how to, okay? Sammy never did a tough guy thing other than scheme. And he said he pulled the trigger one time. You believe the story that he got the nickname because he was a good fighter, the Bull? Do you believe that? He told you that, right? Did he tell you that on your show? Did he say that he got my nickname, the Bull, came because some old timers and say, "Oh, look at the little bull"? No, he got the nickname the Bull because he's from Bull's Head, Staten Island. There were 3 different individuals that were in that group. So to identify, Sammy from Bull became Sammy Bull. That's what he became. Because back then, Sammy was, according to the psychological report, they have him here at 5'6", but I'm 5'9". I can eat an apple off of his head. So I know he's not 5'6". He's probably closer to 5'4", 5'5". And I remember him back then. He went to beautician school. He was a very thin guy. He wasn't no bull. He became a bull years later when he thought he was going to prison and he began taking steroids. He became a bull. When he was working out in the gym with Frankie Fabiano and other individuals, and they told me he was taking the needles in his ass and they blew up to go to prison because he was so afraid of going to jail. So he wanted to put some muscle on. That's when he became a bull. But before that, he was just little Sammy from Bull's Head, which became Sammy Bull. So the nickname was a lie, okay? And again, look, I didn't want to come on the air, and I'm not here. I don't give a second thought to Sammy Gravano. I really don't. I don't watch podcasts. I don't. I'm just not. I'm not computer literate. I don't go online and do it. But he doesn't have the right. He doesn't have the right when a guy that you knew was a man's man. You saw that man, how he comported himself, how John Gotti comported himself. I've never seen anybody like him, and I've seen them all. And I'm not saying it because he's my father. Would I defend him regardless? Always.
Of course.
Always. But I'm going to tell you something, Pat, not to interrupt you.
Please, go for it.
But just to tell you this much, there's limits in how far I can go in my defense of my father. But when I have an opportunity to observe this man, and when people who did time in the most violent prisons in the country, if not the world, okay, in the most secure places in the world, and saw how he comported himself, if they're the ones who are further filling my head, if they're further filling my balloon, my head, to keep preaching the gospel, preaching John Gotti, okay, the attributes of John Gotti, look, he was the real deal. If he wasn't, you say, he's my father, I loved him. And you can rest on that note and go on to something else.
So you know what it does? Like in life,
All right. So, very interesting. So, from what Mr. John Gotti Jr. is saying, Sammy the Bull Gravano didn't get the name the Bull from being tough. It was because he was from Bull's Head, New York or whatever, wherever these guys are from, into category them people. Well, there was other mafia dudes back then with the name Sammy. You had Sam Giancana. You had a bunch of people. So maybe that's how they knew they were talking about a certain Sammy when they said Sammy the Bull, because everyone knew Sammy the Bull from Bullhead or whatever he's trying to say. Very interesting. Very interesting stuff. I mean, we all watch Mr. Gravano and all the stuff he puts out. Mr. Francini, we watch all his stuff and everything he puts out. But, you know, what we haven't seen is Mr. John Gotti Jr. speaking on all this. And he's been pretty quiet, and no one's, you know, probably just as living his life. So it was interesting to hear him. Now, I haven't heard this whole video, and I don't know if I can get struck for playing this video. I'm not sure. Let me see what Debbie says. I think the sound when you talk sounds a little echoey. Oh, okay. All right. We don't watch all that stuff. All right, you don't have to, Bendejo. It's just, it pulls away. I watch this once in a while, these interviews with these guys for ideas, and the way they hold themselves, like when you're acting or whatever, the attitudes that they have, the yada, 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 you know. And it's not like they're lying. This stuff was real. They killed people for a living. Right? But what was interesting is the reason they got rid of Paul Castellano was because he was a businessman. And they didn't want to do that, right? They didn't want to open businesses. They weren't supposed to be opening. They were mafia, right? Guys, whatever, everything low key, whatever, you know, no traces to nothing. But I guess Mr. Gravano, well, it's a proven fact, Mr. Gravano had numerous businesses, drywall, concrete, you name it pretty much. Supposedly he killed people and took over their businesses. Which, I don't know how you would do that. From the video I seen, supposedly he would become a partner with these people, a silent partner or something like that, or, you know, become partners with them, and then these people would come up missing, and he owned part of it, so he took over the whole company. Very interesting stuff, I'll tell you that much. Very interesting. But, you know, like I said, a lot of these people like Mr. Gravano. A lot of these people like Mr. Francini, Mr. Gravano. And it gets big views. I'm not going to lie. These videos get a lot of views, right? I mean, not my channel, but these documentaries or interviews with these people do get a lot of views. So, all right, how long are we into this? 30 minutes only. Well, we know how this is pretty much going to go. Let me just play a little bit more of this.
I get judged for who I befriend. I get judged for who I marry. We get judged for choices we make, investments, all this other stuff. But then you also get judged for who you make your right-hand guy. Your dad made him the underboss.
Made a mistake.
So if he is who you say he is, Sam, that means your dad's a bad judge of character, because the underboss is like, I mean, it's who John, wasn't John that to, who was the underboss with Paul Castellano before, he was taken out at state?
Remember, Pat, to answer that question, remember Frankie DeChico was the guy. Frankie got blown up. Right. He got killed. Great man, a tough guy. And again, the picture, if there's a picture of my father and Frankie as kids in their 20s. Frankie was, I think, 4 or 5 years older than my dad. My father's 28 years old, and Frankie's maybe 32, 33 in Lewisburg Penitentiary with Mickey Boy Paradiso and other individuals. These guys cut their teeth in the maximum security penitentiary together. They put work in together. This goes back to the MCC visit. What my father says, Punk couldn't do any time. My father violated his own belief. His belief is if you didn't do time with John Gotti, he ain't making you nobody. You ain't going nowhere with John Gotti. Everybody in John's circle did time with John Gotti. Everybody. Frankie DeChico was very close to my father because he did time with my father. He did time in Lewisburg Penitentiary, okay? In the unit, walked the yard with my father, went to wars with my father. Say, Frankie, that was Frankie's position. When Frankie got killed, John, being the diplomat, did what he believed. He didn't do the right thing, but he did what he believed to be the right thing. Took a Brooklyn guy. Frankie's close friend was Sammy Gravano. He already took Frankie's old position, and now he moved him along and put him in that position, and Frankie in a somewhat quasi-acting position for Frankie. In Frankie's stead, Frankie being dead. He moved him along and cultivated him along. And you have to understand something, okay? The Sammy Gravano that you see today, and the Sammy Gravano that did time the way he did the time, was not the Sammy Gravano on the streets. Sammy's not a stupid guy. Sammy knows how to say the right things and do the right things. Sammy was an earner. Sammy went out. He knew how to turn the rocks over. He knew how to go find the money. He knew how to do things. He knew how to talk to people, okay? And he knew how to get things done. He was a schemer. He was a plotter. He was one of those guys. It takes a unique character to lure your best friend into a place and fully knowing, and you're having a cup of coffee and you can kill him right there on the spot. I'm not sure I'm qualified to do that. In fact, I believe I'm not, okay? So that just goes to tell you the depth of his character. So if he can do something like that, what else could he do? There's different people, you
Right.
know.
Well,
I used to say this, not to interrupt you, please. I used to say this. I brought home a lot of good men from prison with me and helped get them jobs. As long as they're civilians, we're friends, okay? I walked away from my former life, my former existence, and I tell them the same thing. If you're going to revert back and go back to the former gang, your crew, whatever have you, please. Just leave me out of this. I've been through enough. I've been through enough. My family's been through enough. But if you're going to do the right thing, okay, you're going to be a true blue brother in every sense of the word. Take care of your family. We'll be there for each other. But that's as far as it goes. I got your back. There's no problems at all. But I know these people, and I brought them over, and I bring these people to meet my family. I bring these people to my son's fights. I brought 500 people to my son's fight in Florida when he fought Floyd Mayweather. 60 were convicts. 60 of them were convicts at the time, either my father or I. Was in 3 of them were in Marion with my dad. And you want to know what? You can't hide in prison. If you want to see someone's flaws, you want to see their character, you want to see if they're real men or not, you can't hide in prison because I'm with you 24/7. I can see everything about you. I could tell you when you brush your teeth. I could tell you when you wash your ass. You can't hide in prison. In the streets, you could hide. You could hide. You see me 4 times a week for 2 hours each time or an hour, and you say the right things. You comport yourself. You open the umbrella when you have to open the umbrella. You open the door when you have to open the door. You walk like a gentleman. You talk like a gentleman. You know exactly when you should speak, okay? When the boss isn't present, when the boss walks in the room, when the chief walks in the room in his presence, you know when you're supposed to speak and when you're not supposed to speak. Sammy knew those things. You see him in the pictures holding the umbrella for my father. You see him. You see him opening the door. You see him. You see him pushing John Miller and the reporters back out of the way when John is walking down the street. You see him. He did his job. Did a pretty good job. Okay? But again, it goes back to come full circle what John said. You can't put a guy in that position unless you know if he's capable of doing time. My father used to say this, and he said this in Marion, Illinois, and he was a hypocrite in this respect. He says, John, looking back, to be a street guy and to live this life the right way, you should never get married. You should never have kids. Never get married, never have kids. You have to devote yourself to this. And every guy would have to qualify, should do 1 year in Marion, Illinois, in a lockdown, maximum level 6 prison. This is the worst of the worst. Show me you could do this. You could do anything.
Marion, Illinois. Lockdown. Oh, that's where they kept the real bad boys. You had Joliet, you had Mary. Oh man, yeah, yeah. This is interesting, right? This is some pretty interesting stuff, and I can't watch too much of this stuff, right? Because recently I found out that I'm small Italian, so this stuff gets my blood a boiling. So this is pretty interesting, right? I mean, need I say more? Uh, well, I think maybe we should. I don't know if we should go any further with this or not, but very interesting. And like I said, I don't think anyone has seen or heard. Excuse me. From John Gotti Jr. since I think they did the Gotti movie, right, with John Travolta playing Gotti, which I haven't seen all that movie. I haven't seen it all. I've seen little parts of it, but there was certain people that were good at playing Gotti. There was one other guy that played Gotti. I forget the name of the actor, but it was before this movie with Travolta, and that guy was pretty good in it. So, with some indica and white Zen, what are you talking about, Bendejo? Bendejo, we're listening to a very serious topic here. We've heard from Mr. Franzini. We've heard from Mr. Bull Gravano. And now, out of the ashes, comes Mr. John Gotti Jr. to talk about this. And he seems pretty level-headed. Let me remind you, you would not want to meet any of these guys in a dark alley. I'm just saying. All right, there's a little bit of this video left. Let's listen to a little bit of it and see what we can miss. Mr. or Miss Bendejo, can you please behave yourself? This is a very serious interview.
Okay, now I know you ain't gonna flip. You ain't gonna turn on your brotherhood. You ain't gonna turn. You're gonna be a man because your honor is gonna keep you intact. Sammy wasn't capable of doing any of that. He fell apart the moment he went to jail. I mean, we've interviewed a guy who's the leader of the Ghost Shadows, a kid named Brian. The Ghost Shadows was a Chinatown gang, and he ended up somehow locked with Sammy. And he was sending messages and kites back to us. This guy's not comporting himself right. He's not doing time right. And my father began to have reservations about the choice that he made. And then shortly thereafter, several months later, sure enough, in the middle of the night, they walked him out, and we found out the next day. And my father was dead. That was him sitting there in the visiting room and questioning what he did. He didn't put the blame on anybody else. He put the blame on himself because he made up until that point. He made all the right calls. I believe he did. I mean, as now an outsider looking in, I believe John made the right calls. I did. I think he put the right people in place. He had tremendous amount of loyalty. Take into consideration the impact of Sammy Gravano flipping. Okay, he's the guy who is supposedly the top, right? The boss is here. He knows all the secrets. Certainly was a greedy guy. He knew all the money was. That's for damn sure. Okay. Now, as a result of Sammy flipping, minimum 57 guys get indicted. 57 guys, many of them high level. Okay, due to his cooperation. He's a tremendous asset for the government, but he is a tsunami to the streets. There's an enormous panic going on now. People are running and hiding and whispering now, okay? And yet, we had that time, all those cases, that barrel of cases that came our way, there was one rat. Sammy Gravano. Wasn't anybody else. You know how many guys got life without parole? You know how many guys got 50-year bids? My Uncle Gene just came home to 29 straight years. Okay. You know how many guys are just coming home now? They're just now coming out old men. They're drifting out of prison. That was all the guys that were around John Gotti that grew up around John Gotti, the Bergen Hunt and Fish Club crew around John Gotti, guys East New York around John Gotti, the Fatico boys, okay, around John Gotti, all those guys that grew up with John, okay. You had a confidential informant named Willie Boy Johnson, and that was it. That's all you had. And even he did better time than Gravano. When it came time to testify, they put him 22 months in solitary confinement, refused to flip, stood up, went to trial, and they won the trial. Ultimately, in the end, he was killed. But the point I'm trying to make is that up until that point, when John became that person, not that low, he became that guy, that administrator, okay? I believe for the most part, he made the right decisions. Now, as an observer on the outside looking in, looking back, fancying myself a historian and replaying the whole scenario in my head. And now, as an older, wiser head looking, not a young warrior that's full of testosterone that's ready to jump into the battle. Now, as an older guy with lower testosterone that would probably make a better general today than he was then.
Mhm.
Okay, that's me today. And now observing and replaying John's moves, my father's moves. And other than him being a degenerate gambler and the Gravano decision that he made, I don't know of many things that you could have redone differently because John did it from the perspective of how he was raised and taught by his elders, the way they taught him. And I think for the most part, those guys did hard time, did it all. Now, was he right going to the Ravenite and the clubs and all that? No, I don't agree with that, but he wasn't going to back down. That was the problem. It's like a fighter that's tailor-made. Mike Tyson's a knockout puncher, and you're not going to put, say, like in my time, a little older than you are, a Jerry Quarry-esque fighter who didn't know how to do anything else, other tough guy that's going to come forward and you got to knock him out. And John was one of those guys. He's going to come forward. He's not going to dodge and duck. He doesn't know how to. He didn't have that kind of finesse. He was what he was, and he wasn't going to hide it. So he was tailor-made to be knocked out by the government.
Do you think
All right. So there you go. Very interesting. Is there a secret war going on between these people still? I don't know. Mr. Gravano's back out. Mr. Gotti Jr. is out of prison. Mr. Francini's out of prison. And it seems to me like what do I get out of this? Well, it seems to me like these guys took out the head honcho, Paul Castellano, and they didn't like Paul Castellano because Paul Castellano made money through businesses. And Mr. Gotti thought, and all these guys thought, that they should make their money the way the mafia has always made their money, through racketeering, prostitution, gambling, strong arm, protection, yada, yada. And that's what mafia was, right? And they didn't want to be in business, and they didn't want anything to do with drugs. But it seems like Mr. Castellano did these things. I don't know about drugs, if he sold drugs or not, and these guys got rid of him for it. But it's almost like they became somewhat of Paul Castellano, because Mr. Gravano opened up all kinds of businesses, and Mr. Gotti was in the public flashing everything. So it's a very interesting thing when you break it down, right? They're all complaining, we're getting choked out. Mr. Castellano, we're not making no money. He's not a real mafioso. He's spending all his money in businesses and everything. He don't know the streets. Let's make our money the old-fashioned way, the mafia, what we are, street people. But then it's almost like they became what they got rid of. Was it the beast, eating the beast, right? The beast became the beast. Right? You had Mr. Gravano that was sucking up all the money, giving all the jobs to the people he knew, which he got money back. right? He monopolized it. He locked it in. All the other families coming to Mr. Gotti saying, I can't make no money. The Bulls got everything. Yeah, man, it's kind of crazy. But then out of all this, you have to remember why they got rid of Paul Castellano, because he did the same thing Sammy the Bull did. Wow, that's interesting. Almost like they became, the evil just jumped, right? So it comes to find out that they, maybe the only one that was really street, that lived and breathed the street, did time and whatever it took for the family, probably might have been John Gotti Sr., right? He probably was the only one. I mean, I think I seen another video where they said John Gotti had no idea what was even going on until people started coming to him saying, your boy's sucking up all of New York, right? He's taking over everything, drywall, concrete, built, steel. Well, little Sammy the Bull Gravano was one smart dude. But the same thing he voted on of getting rid of, he was already. Wow. That's interesting. That's very interesting. Right? But probably Mr. John Gotti Jr. is probably right. The only one that knew the streets, that was the street, was John Gotti Sr. Yeah. That's something. And that's real, folks. That's real stuff. Right? But Sammy the Bull was an earner. He was the one that, he had all the jobs. He had all the money. John Gotti got a kickback. Right? You feed the boss. Boom. And if you listen to Michael Francini, I forget his name. I can't pronounce it right. He was a big earner. I mean, Michael Francisi was an earner and a big earner. So much of an earner. He was their golden egg. He made big bucks with that gas thing, right? Which was a scam, which is what John Gotti Jr. is talking about. That's how the mob was supposed to operate, was scamming, stealing, right? Mob stuff. That's how they became as powerful. And that's what some of these guys wanted to stick with, right? And that's how Francini, Mr. Michael Francini, he was a street guy. And then he was good at scamming. So much so, he was making so much money, he's like, I don't even know what to do with this money. I could buy a country. But he was a scammer. He was an earner. And he gave money back to the family. Wow, this is interesting. And Sammy the Bull was the same thing, right? He controlled everything. But Mr. Michael Francini didn't control that. That was a scam that he came up with. An untraceable business. By the time the government knew, Mr. Franzini shut down the gas station and was gone. They didn't even know what hit him. And he had hundreds of these gas stations all over the every city. I mean, it was just, you listen to it and I'm like, how did this guy come up with that? How do you have the balls, excuse my language, cojones, to come up with a scam like that, and it worked, and before anyone knows anything, you already made millions. I don't know. My hat's off to these guys. Why? Because there's a little bit of all these one-time bad guys in us all. We all wish we could do something like that. We all wish we had a brain to come up with a scheme like that, where they were hitting the gas stations and every so much money they made, they got a piece of it. It was just what a holy cow. Before you know it, there's just millions. The whole family, all the 5 families were coming to Mr. Francini saying, "What, Howard, the heck are you guys? How are you making all this money? Holy crap. Unreal, unbelievable." Well, these guys should be working for the government. I have no idea why they didn't hire Mr. Francini to work for the government. To find, how do you not hire these guys? These guys did all this stuff. And what scares me the most is when these guys that had such a grip on the world and cities at that time say the government makes us look like baby crap. What? You don't want to mess with the United States government. No. Oh my God. That's what scares me, is because you don't. I don't know. This is just my opinion. I'm an idiot. I'm stupid. There's stuff like this intrigues me. I watch it. It's interesting how someone could hold that much power where they're almost as powerful as the United States president or even God. You listen to some of these guys, they were like, they were gods. They did whatever they wanted. And some of them say that. How? I don't know. But it shows humanity, how fast this world can go very bad and very ugly if everybody in the world thinks they're gods. And the next thing you know, they just start going out getting rid of people. I mean, it's just the horror to think of it. And I can only thank God that He's got control of everything. In Jesus' name, amen. But do I see great movies in these guys' stories? Sure. Every single one of them can make a movie out of their stories just themselves. Sure. Great movies. Interesting. If you like that kind of life. It intrigues me to listen how these guys had so much power, how they built themselves up, how they built empires. Pretty much the same way the United States government and people came here and started in America. But to go out and do it is another thing. I like life, even though I have one foot in the grave and one out myself. I still love life and the life that God gave me, which ain't much, poor and barely going. But you know what? It is what it is, and I hope I can forward myself, better myself. But it is interesting to listen to Mr. Gotti and all the rest of these guys that were in the Italian mafia. And would they all be alive today if this was Italy? Probably not. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just saying the truth. Probably not. If we were in real Italy, they brought so much trouble down. I mean, if we were in Italy, I don't know if these guys would be alive today. No offense, gentlemen, but I don't know if they would be alive today, because that's where the mafia came from, was Italy. And I guess in Italy, they're crazier than an American mob, I guess. Sometimes these guys even talk about, the old country. Yeah, I don't know. It's scary. It'll give you nightmares at night. So there you guys go. What a great interview by this guy. I've been seeing this guy interview a lot of guys. I don't know who this new interview guy is. He's been out for a couple of years. It's PBD podcasting. But I've been seeing this gentleman that's doing the interview with Mr. Gotti in numerous other interviews, and it's always great questioning. Great, the guy always has great questions for these guys, and he lets them tell, and he digs in deep of, well, how did that happen? How did that hit get called? Or what was that situation where, how did this guy get brought into this? And this guy ain't even mafia, or he ain't even, he was a friend of ours, or he was an associate of theirs, or whatever. I mean, it's just, you don't know who's mob or who's not. If they have secret associations with people, you mess with the wrong guy, and the next thing you know, your whole world is a wreck. Yeah. All right, I think we're gonna end it here. I think that's what we're gonna do. Of course, if it wasn't for my family, the Stooges, we'd all be. We probably would have brains, but this is what I got left. This is what my family left me. I hope I make it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, have a great night. God bless. Go and watch these videos and this story. But, like I said, you got the three of them that are now podcasting or voicing their opinions. You got Mr. Gavano, you got Mr. Francini, and you got Mr. Gotti, and they're all talking and yada, yada, yada. I mean, it's just some great stuff, right? Great movies probably will come out of this, maybe, if not great books, right? All glory to God that I was never in a thing like that. I mean, that's just the stress alone of being a mafia guy must be tremendous, right? Knowing that day by day murders and people getting ripped off. Yeah, I mean, it'd just be so stressful. You folks have a great night. God bless everyone. I'll be back maybe with a fire video tonight or something. Unless something big goes on, then we'll report on it. You folks have a great night. God bless, and we'll talk to you later. And keep on digging for them crystals, right? The magic crystal egg crystals that you find in the ground. You might get lucky and find a crystal egg. You break it open and it's one of these crystals inside. Who knows? Life's like a box of chocolate. Is it? Is it really? You folks have a good night.